Welcome to Apothecary After Dark, the official podcast of Amityville Apothecary.
This is what real witches talk about when the doors are locked, the lights are low, and the incense is still smoldering.
From spellwork and shadow work to hot takes on hexes, healing, and everything in between, we're serving up magic, mystery, and a little bit of mischief.
So pour a cup of your favorite libation, light that protection candle, and settle in. It's about to get witchy. Welcome to the season premiere of season 3 of Apothecary After Dark, the official podcast of Amityville Apothecary, where real witches lock the door, close down the blinds, and get to talking about the real juicy, what we talk about when we're not, interfacing with people.
My name is Dina. Scenes,
yeah, my name is Dina Rosenberg, co-owner of Amityville Apothecary with my main squeeze.
Hi guys, I'm Danielle DC. I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to our very first season 3 guest. Tonight we are lucky to have the pleasure of speaking with Mitch Horowitz. His most recent book is Practical Magic, and Mitch is so highly accomplished as an author and a television personality and a historian, and I don't know. I mean, maybe you've had 3 different lifetimes with the amount of credentials you have. We're really thrilled to have you here. So
thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to be on the maiden voyage of the new season, and I'll be seeing you all soon, and I'm looking forward to that.
So, Mitch, you're going to be talking about practical magic from your book, Practical Magic, at the upcoming Alchemy Academy, which will be in a few weeks, October 11th, here in Amityville, New York, on the border of Suffolk County on Long Island. We say on Long Island, not in Long Island. We got to get it right. You could tell when people aren't natives when they say it wrong, right?
It's true.
So we were talking when we were setting up the tech about, the types of magic we are sort of fell into, right? And I started talking to you about your chapter on spontaneous petitions or spontaneous prayer. I hope I'm getting this right. And that's something that really resonated with me because, like you, I feel that my most powerful magic has always been those off the cuff, super emotionally charged, honest petitions to the whatever you want to name it. And they've always had the most action. So I would love to hear more about your perspective on that.
That's such a wonderful opening question because this has been on my mind this very day. It's the subject of an article I'm working on right now, actually. I think that spontaneity is underappreciated in magic and spellcasting and prayer, for that matter. A lot of us grew up, for example, with either congregational experiences of spirituality, as I certainly did. There might be a kind of call and response style of prayer, very common here in the Western world. And we import that in a certain way. We migrate that into magic and witchcraft, where we recite or memorize spells from someone else's playbook. And if that works for the individual, then by all means, I'm first in line to shake hands. But for me, spontaneity in matters of prayer appeals, magic, spell work rules the day. And I really want people to wait for and take full advantage of those moments when they might just feel emotion welling up in them. Because if there's one thing I've grown certain of on the path at this point in my own search, it is that there is an invisible bridge between passion and magic that absolutely requires skin in the game, the emotions to really be in play. And that might mean responding to something in your natural surroundings, for example. I think I write in the book that I thoroughly embarrassed myself by praying in the New York Public Library because there's a ceiling mural of Prometheus that's very meaningful to me. I've done the same with a modern bas relief of Mercury down in the financial district. And I'm willing to sacrifice the mild embarrassment of my neighbor Mike, wondering what on earth I'm doing, to take advantage of the emotions and the spontaneity. And I'll do. I mean, look, I might bring that to tarot. I might bring that to the I Ching. I might bring that to a spell that I work on or that I've personally crafted. I remember one night I was doing a prosperity spell that someone else had designed for me, although I gathered up all the different moving parts and herbs and candles and stones and the other things that were being used in the spell. And I stayed up all night long doing the spell, and I didn't feel energized. I felt depleted. I felt something was off. And for me, it wasn't a question of how many hours did I spend doing it or how much time did I spend acquiring the botanicals, the herbs, the stones, the candles. I could understand a person finding a lot of meaning in that. I deeply in my heart could. But for me, that was not the bridge. The bridge was passion and spontaneity, which is a theme, that recurs throughout practical magic.
It definitely is. And you talk about absolute clarity on your wish or your petition and how difficult that is. And I think so much about, Danielle and I had, dark nights of the soul about the same time, because I don't know if you know this, we share the same birthday, month, day, and year. And so our life paths are very, closely
we met in
intertwined.
college.
We've known each other more in our lives than we haven't known each other at this point. Where
Libra.
Yeah, Libras with Leo moons and Sag rising, Cap rising. Yeah, so I remember when I was at that point in my life and people would ask me, what is it that you want? And my response would be to cry because I didn't know. And how that felt so disorienting because I had spent so much of my adult life, here I was over 40 already, so much of my adult life on a path of knowing what I was supposed to do, where I was supposed to go, who I was supposed to be, or so as it was put on me. Well, and then going through that dark night of the soul of unshackling myself and then being like, okay, well, now what do I rebuild?
And to that point, I was listening to something you were saying on YouTube today, Mitch, and you were talking about going back early in your lifetime to the age of like 3 or 4 years old and really getting back to that purity and innocence. Because during the dark night of the soul, where I was under all of a lifetime of societal pressures and expectations of get this career and get married and have the kids and have the car and have the material wealth. I did all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden it fell apart during that dark night. So I was no longer in alignment and I had a lot of void. But I started refueling my soul with the things that I did most as a kid, such as, that curiosity of re-engaging astrology. I used to climb trees as a kid, and I would spend hours in nature immersed because it would refuel me. I would make stick mud puddles and spells. I would just naturally do it and commute. I would try to communicate with the birds and the animals, and I just always had a connection to nature. So it's getting back to those roots that was restorative to my soul, and I think that's what naturally is inherent in my essence, and then that really emerged into the creation of this business.
So, combining that with, your wishes, with your petitions, with the spontaneity.
Yeah. I'm so moved that you bring up that topic because no fooling, and this is going to be, it's going to be nuclear when we're all together in Amityville. In addition to this theme that I was referring to earlier of spontaneity, the purpose of the article that I'm working on right now is finding that authentic wish and using exercises of spontaneity to do it. I mean, hands down, that's the overall thrust of the article. And one of the things I do talk about is trying to get in touch with your fantasies, your dreams from that age, 3 or 4, where we form our earliest long-term memories. Obviously, we have memories that go back before then, but things that are accessible to us when we're in a normal conscious state are still so valuable, because when a child is, and I have two older adolescent sons, I recognize this in them as I do in myself. When a child is at that wonderful age of 3 or 4, and I would say probably going up through maybe age 9 or so, peer pressure has not become concretized. It hasn't become this hardened thing. Our cement is still wet, and it's such a valuable time. And too often as adults, we internalize peer pressure, I think, to a greater extent than we understand. And even when we're talking to ourselves, just privately within the confines of our own psyche, that peer pressure exerts an influence that obfuscates what we really want. And you'll hear it all the time in our alternative spiritual culture. You hear people using the same words over and over. I have to say service, so I don't seem like some narcissistic lunatic or something. We use these words, these terms that are supposed to conform our wishes to what we have been told within our subculture, outside of our subculture, within our childhood, constitutes a good wish, a good person. And I ask the individual in private to dispense with all of that, not necessarily being able to always act on a wish, but to know it, and to really have an embarrassingly honest idea within of one's wish, whatever it is. And I can't emphasize that enough, because everybody will say, well, I want to be a Reiki practitioner so I can provide this and that. And it's like, yo, right. What is it you want? Without the qualifications, I'm not, somebody's, I'm not a proctor who's going to tell you, oh no, you've got to add this, or you got to add that. There's no exercise here that requires conformity. It just requires radical internal privacy and honesty. And
to that point, it's funny, when we were first opening this, family members asked, like, are you having a nervous breakdown? Like, are you okay? What do you mean?
What are you doing?
What do you mean you're leaving your career and your husband and you're selling your house and like you're gonna sell rocks? Like, what? And I'm like, okay, but I'm like, yep, we're gonna do this thing. We know in our gut this is what we're doing. And like, other people didn't share that vision, and that made our souls happy. And we were like totally aligned. Yeah, but nobody else got it.
No, and honestly, it's so funny because to what you're saying about being so honest with yourself and knowing your wish, as embarrassing as it might be, to get naked with yourself in that. I think a lot of times we're just not even comfortable with our deepest desires, right? And that goes into shadow work and all of that, like really that brutal honesty of what do you want from this lifetime, with honesty. But for me, I just didn't even care if it succeeded. And I think that's probably why it did. I just wanted to try something new and exciting and just be my real self. And if you look at photos of who I was 6 years ago and what I look like now, it's literally like I'm a different person.
Yeah.
And when people come to me, as they often do in the shop, and, I need help, I'm not happy with my life, we all get these questions because the spiritual seekers, wherever they are in the path, they're looking, they're seeking, they're searching, because there is an inherent dissatisfaction to where they are. My question is, similar to you with the brutal honesty, like, wave a magic wand, and if you could, what would your life look like? How would you present your avatar? How would you dress? What would you adorn yourself with? Who would you hang out with? And what would you be talking about if nobody was policing you? And that's really something to think about. I think it's so important, like your wish or what you want, because we're not given permission to think about that. It's almost like taboo.
And how do you define success? Because success isn't necessarily monetary, because I had all that monetary. So like for me, it was that authenticity and like rediscovering who am I? What's true to me? Because I had lost that. So
It's so interesting. Our culture provides so much in the way of satisfaction and self-indulgence, and you can go on social media 24/7 and spout off about whatever is, on your mind at that instant. And yet, for all of that, I think that we in all of our different subcultures are so shackled by peer pressure that we don't even know how to talk to ourselves with frankness anymore. And I found myself maybe 15 years ago, and I certainly was able to confirm this by looking back on notes that I wrote in journals or in the margins of books. I found myself using a language that was not my own, using vocabulary terms from a spiritual culture that were intended to indemnify me from bad consequences or ensure that I was doing the right thing, appropriately qualifying whatever my wish was. And as I got rid of that, it was so liberating. And going back to this question of probing your wishes, desires, fantasies, dreams from 3 or 4, jokingly, we all think, oh, at 3 or 4, everybody wants to be like a ballerina or a cowboy or something. And it's not true. We actually have very rich fantasy lives at that age. And those are fantasy lives that generally are emergent from someplace other than just peer pressure. I remember it vividly myself. And I really asked people to get in touch with that. I asked them to do it privately and not to share what they find, because other people will just take it away from you and it becomes this whole peer pressure process again and again. And don't be worried, oh, if I hit upon what I really want and it's impractical, then I'm just a schnook. It's like, that's not so. The question of practicality is important, but set that aside for a moment. There's always time to dwell on that. First, just know, just understand. And when you understand that, it may give you that bridge to prayer or magical practice or spell work or whatever it may be that will bring success to that work where you might have experienced only halfway success before because the real passion is in play.
Yeah, that real passion really is like this secret something, I think, that makes your spell work or your practice effective or not effective.
yeah,
Really.
absolutely.
Yeah, same. I mean,
And I'll tell you something else, if I may. Like, we often hear in our spiritual traditions that the seeker has to verify everything for him or herself, and I believe that, but that has to be hardcore truth. That just can't be a platitude or a principle, because usually when teachers in different traditions tell you to verify something, what they really mean is go away, and when you agree with exactly what I've said, then come back. And you have to allow for the fact that the seeker must verify everything on his or her own terms. And I really feel very strongly that words like verify should never be used as a platitude. It's got to be hardcore. I mean, this is our lives. We all, probably most people watching this podcast, feel, as I do, that something survives death, that flesh and bone is not it. I feel that way, but I don't know, and I don't know what form that takes. Hence the urgency of treating our lives with some degree of needfulness to really know what we're about. Don't let it pass by.
I think that sort of slides into the chapter on the left-hand path, right? Because, and it's so funny, we had been talking about, on the TikTok, I don't know how much you're in the world of TikTok, but a lot of TikTok is about, and I want to I'm going to ask you a couple of questions at the end, and I'm going to direct all the TikTokers here to listen to your answers, because I think you're going to drop so many bombs on them, they're going to cry. But in the land of TikTok, there's a lot of talk about the left-hand path and the right-hand path. And, I get pissed because I think it's a ridiculous conversation, because we have two arms. And I think you can't just be all one thing or all the other. And also you can't say like, well, it's a left-hand path because we're working on ourselves, or we're, trying to do things for ourselves. Like, I would say that most people on right-hand path are really left-hand path workers. They just don't want to call it that.
I agree with that. I think we perfume a lot of things to ourselves. We like to step up on a platform, a milk crate that puts us one or two steps higher than the other guy. We like labels. We gain a sense of prestige from looking down upon the person who's supposedly one rung below us on the ladder in terms of self-realization and spiritual rectitude. I use general terms sometimes just because we need to use general terms in order to communicate with one another. But to get hung up on questions of left-hand path versus right-hand path, it's really just a trip for a person to feel authority and prestige. We have in this country raised at least one generation, maybe two generations, to seek prestige through denunciation. It runs riot across social media. It runs riot. The Kabbalion is garbage. The left-hand path is for bad people. Tarot is a game, blah, blah, blah. We love pulling out these shivs to demonstrate our cred at the expense of another. It's just an importation of mainstream values into the alternative spiritual culture. And then we just become George Orwell's Animal Farm, which is usually what happens in the human situation anyway. I don't want to bring orthodoxy into alternative spirituality. 90% of us are here to get away from it. And yet all of us, somehow find ways of recreating that self-same orthodoxy. And that's what we're doing when we get excessively bound up in these terms and what path represents the light and what path represents the dark. That's the oldest human story, and it doesn't wash for me. That's not what I want in my practice or in my circle of seekers.
So one thing about our audience and our customers or our consumers, there's the person who will just say, I'm brand new. Help me even understand what magic is, what ceremonial magic is, high magic, what are different practices. I don't know if I'm a witch or if I'm a nature lover or if I am just very sensitive to energy, etc. So what would you say to that beginner practitioner about your expertise and what they can expect to learn from what you're teaching and your new book, Practical Magic? So it's a little bit relatable in the most simple terms.
Yeah. Well, a big influence on me occurred maybe it was like 20, 30 years ago. I was at an integral yoga center on Christopher Street in Manhattan. And I was looking at the sign-up sheet for the different classes, beginner, intermediate, advanced. And inevitably, the most sign-ups were on for the beginner's class because everyone regards themselves as a beginner. I mean, of course, there are some people who very justifiably sign up for the advanced class or the intermediate class or what have you. So, you're holding the headstand for 30 seconds longer. It's the same headstand. And I think that being a beginner is a wonderful place to be. It's the only place to be. I gravitate towards beginners' books all the time. I buy astrology books, and including some hoary old classics that are ostensibly beginners' books. We were talking before the camera went on about Robert Place's book, The Tarot, which is a book I had the great privilege to publish and that I love. And at the time, Bob was saying, what should I call it? What should I call it? And I said, Bob, your class is called The Tarot. Just call it The Tarot. And he said, but I can't do that. There's 100 books called The Tarot. And I said, I understand, but excellence never needs to apologize for itself. If you want to do a book, a basic book on the tarot, call it the tarot, call it astrology, call it yoga, call it the I Ching, whatever. I feel like none of us have to ever apologize for or think of ourselves outside the category of beginner because again, it's all the same stuff. The headstand may be 30 seconds longer. It's the same headstand, you know.
I love that.
I
It's
do
true.
too.
It is the same headstand.
It makes it so much more approachable
It does.
for someone that's like, it's too cerebral. I don't even know where to start. Well, just start. Just start
We're
with
gonna
one
have
thing that grabs your
such a
attention.
good time. And I mean, look, my principle is that stuff works better if we understand how it works. So I do like to talk about some history. I do like to talk about some background, but I do that because I want all of us to feel a warranted sense of confidence that we're dealing with something mature and real and effective.
So, Mitch, talking about your use of language, Danielle and I were talking about when we were reading your book. Your command of the English language is something that I aspire to have one day. I really need to start reading more. Um, but I was thinking about how you talk a lot about terminology and words in your effort to give people language around practice. And then I thought at the same time about how people, when they come into the shop, like to Danielle's point, have questions and about terms and calling themselves certain things and how loaded language can be. Like, what does it mean to be a witch or be a, whatever it is? And I was just like really curious about like what your thoughts were to the meaning behind the words that we use to define ourselves.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I apply plenty of words to myself, and some of those words are controversial. And I do it for reasons of historical integrity. I don't want us to lose certain words or allow certain words to be strictly defined by people who use them as an epithet or an insult, like New Age, for example. I use the term New Age all the time. I happily define myself as New Age because that means something to me. New Age is a radically ecumenical culture of therapeutic spirituality, and I love it. And I wouldn't be doing what I do were it not for the millions of men and women on the New Age. So I won't let that term be turned into just an epithet or an insult. That's just one example of many. At the same time, I don't want to get excessively attached to terms to the point where we're using them like a starbelly sneetch, if you remember your Dr. Zeus. And that's kind of what's going down when we grow overly attached to group terms, like you were talking earlier about right hand versus left hand or what have you. If a term is liberating and clarifying, yes. If a term becomes a means of excluding, it's just getting used in the wrong way to cement the kind of orthodoxy most of us on the path are trying to escape.
Absolutely. So, Mitch will be presenting on practical magic at our upcoming Alchemy Academy on October 11th. And you can use code Alchemy VIP to take 11% off your tickets. It is a full day of learning from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We end the day with a silent supper to connect with our ancestors. And we're so excited to have you. So, Mitch, we always close out our episodes with a tarot card pull for the collective. So, what we typically do is we each pull a card and then we try and make some sense of it and give a message to all of our listeners and watchers.
Well, when you mentioned off camera the tarot pulling aspect of the show, I got hold of a deck that I haven't used recently. It's a tarot deck that was designed by Manly P. Hall, the great occult scholar, and Augustus Knapp in 1929. And I realized that I did a tattoo of the title card to this deck. That's the title card. And
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
There it is.
yeah, that's the
Oh,
tab.
look at
So
that.
you kind of reawaken that for me.
Yay.
And so tell me what we are to do.
So, what we do is we each shuffle and pull a card, and then
I pulled from Cosmic
You pulled
Wisdom
from-
Tarot. My friend Ethany made this deck. I love this deck.
Cool.
And I shuffled before we
Okay. I'm
started
pulling
talking.
from the Smith Waite because old habits die hard.
Sure. That's usually my go-to. That's why these cards are hard because I haven't used the deck too frequently, but I'm down for it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
So I'll start. I got the Page of Swords.
Okay.
Which I think is perfectly appropriate for what we're talking about today, because swords represent thought and communication, and the page is the student. So, she's.
I like it. That rhymes.
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate as we're talking about a beginner and applying practical magic and attending Alchemy Academy and just being a student and just constantly putting things into practice and learning.
Okay, so I got Justice, and I don't remember what book of Rachel Pollack's I read where she talked a little bit about the concept of justice in the terms of doing yourself justice. And that sort of brought me back to earlier in our conversation about your wish and what is it that you truly want for yourself. And that would actually be doing your soul justice in living your full expression in this life. So I really like that.
I do too.
I pulled the Three of Cups, which I think is a great card. I mean, that's sort of us and what the three of us are doing here. It's the flame of ideas. It's stability. It's making an appeal to a greater force. We have the upward pointing portion of the Star of David. And so I think it's very propitious for our gathering.
I love it.
I do too.
Mitch, thank you so much for joining us. Where can everybody that maybe they don't know who you are, where can they find you and learn more about you?
Well, my website is mitchhorowitz.com. That links up to everything. My books are everywhere you buy books, including in your shop, where I encourage people to buy them. I have started a newsletter on Substack called Mystery Achievement. And if people are interested in some of the questions we were talking about spontaneity and a wish, there's an article that, as of this recording, is going up tomorrow. It will already be up there, but check that out because that's a new venture for me, and it's become very special and important.
I think did we sign up for that?
Yes, we did sign up for that.
We signed up.
Thank you. You'll like this piece.
Absolutely. And please come join us at Alchemy Academy. It's an immersive day of learning. You get to hang out with Mitch and learn from him, and I'll be signing all of his products. And it's going to be a special day, no doubt, because the energy in that room just becomes magical. So we're really, really excited to have you come and join us. And
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Thank you for spending so much time with us.
Pleasure. Absolutely. Okay.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Okay.
We'll see you soon. Thanks.
That's all for tonight, witches, but the magic doesn't stop here.
Be sure to follow Apothecary After Dark wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Leave us a comment or review. We'd love to hear what's stirring in your cauldron.
And you can always find us at shopamityvilleapothecary.com or at Amityville Apothecary across all the socials.
Until next time, keep your wards up, your wands at the ready, and your spell work sharp.